Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Rabinovitz, Certified Educational Planner. And with me this evening, although off camera, is Kathy Hart, one of the educational consultants on our team. And she's going to be monitoring the questions that you can type in and feeding them to me periodically. And I just want to thank you all for coming this evening. When we did this webinar last year, it was actually the first time we'd ever done it. It took ages to put it together, and it received rave reviews and one of our biggest audiences ever. So I hope we'll break that record this evening. So we are broadcasting and recording live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you happen to not be watching live, but watching the recording on YouTube, you'll see that there are hyperlinks in the video description that can allow you to just jump to specific pages within Common App. If you only have questions about, say, the activities page or the questions pages, so that you can jump right there. There are a number of downloads for this webinar, and I'll talk about some of them as we go through the webinar, but you can find them all on our SCORE webinar page directly below the description of the webinar. And you'll also find them if you're on watching this through YouTube. You'll also be able to see them below the video. So our agenda for tonight is to introduce, what the Common App is, which colleges accept it. We'll do a very thorough walkthrough of it and focus very much on how to stand out on your Common App, and lots of useful tips to get a jump start on this process. And a few different timelines will be discussed, for rising seniors now filling out the Common App. So let's start with the basic question, which is, what is the Common App? So it is a single application that I'm going to predict that this year a little bit more than 1,100 universities will be using it. Last year it was just under 1,100, but it's basically one application that you fill out and that you can send to up to 20 universities. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated than just filling it out and submitting it to these 20 universities, but just know that this is a phenomenal shortcut for students who are applying to multiple universities, and I will get into the nitty-gritty of what complicates it. So the colleges that use it, first of all, pretty much every name brand college that you can think of is on the Common App. So the two, I'd say, notable exceptions are going to be Georgetown and MIT. They both have their own application. The University of California system and the State University system in California also have their own applications. But other than that, all 12 of our state universities here in Florida, more than 20 of our private universities in Florida, all the Ivy Leagues, there's a wide range from highly selective colleges to much less selective colleges. And some colleges, in fact, probably many colleges, are exclusive users of the Common App, which means they do not have their own application. You can only apply through the Common. So Common App's been around for about 40 years. It was started by 15 forward-thinking universities, really just to simplify the application process. And to show you how it's grown, the latest statistics released by Common App, which were on May 1st, shows that it was used by well over 1 million students, which is up 7% from last year. And each year, by the way, it does keep going up. That these 1.4 million students filed almost 10 million applications, up 11%. And the application volume itself is totally up more than 30% since before the pandemic. So if you wonder why you keep hearing that college admissions has gotten so much more selective, one of the primary reasons behind that is more students are applying, and these students on average are filing more applications each year. So Common App goes live every single year on August 1st, just before the start of the senior year. But the secret, of course, and it's not such a secret, is that there is something called rollover. So students who are rising seniors do not have to wait until August 1st to start their applications. They could start them now. In fact, they could have started them 6 months ago. They could have started them 18 months ago. The idea is, once you hear this webinar, I hope that you will be motivated to work on as much as possible on your Common App before this rollover happens, because the goal really is to get through as much as you can of the application process in the summer, so that it's not going to interfere that much with senior year, where your grades are incredibly important, at least the first quarter or first semester. By the time colleges will review your application, most colleges will review your applications. So the application itself consists of either 6 or 7 pages that are common to all colleges to which you apply. The last page, listed courses and grades, is not used by all colleges, and I'm going to go in and explain, page by page what each page is for. But these are the common pages of Common App that all colleges get when you submit each individual college. And after you submit to a particular college, if you want to change some of the information, you absolutely can. And you'll see that there are certain pages that do lend themselves to making changes. But these are the main pages of Common App. And these are pretty much the pages that are going to roll over. So there are other application pages that don't roll over, and they are specific to individual colleges. So for example, every single college has what's called a questions page, and where they can choose from a very large bank of questions, specifically which ones they want to ask. And then some colleges also have something called a supplement. So again, the supplement, like the questions page, is specific to the individual college. The one interesting thing is that the questions page is actually considered part of Common App. So when I press submit to submit, say, my application to University of Miami, all those common pages that I showed you before, let's back up, all those common pages get sent along with the questions page. The supplement can be sent separately, although you'll see as we get into it that I have a sort of different philosophy on when to send the supplement. So Common App has lots of other features besides the application pages. You can actually search for colleges. You can search for colleges with certain criteria, like its deadline date is, not until February, or that it's located in the state of Michigan, or that it doesn't require any extra essays. You'll basically, through the Common App, you can access every college's website, every college that's on Common App, their website, their admissions website. You can get a virtual tour, lots of statistical data about admissions. Another interesting feature of Common App is something called the requirements grid, which gives you information about every single college on Common App, like when is its deadline, how much does it cost to apply, how many recommendations do I need, does it have early action or early decision. Common App also allows students to track their application status. In some cases, they can even track whether their recommendations have been sent to colleges yet, or at least submitted to Common App. And there is great information about financial aid and scholarships directly on Common App. So don't wait to start on August 1st. Start tonight or tomorrow. Start this weekend. There's so much you can get done before August 1st. So what rolls over? We've already talked about the common pages of Common App, your college list, because you will create your college list on Common App, and the colleges I select to apply to, that list will roll over. And of course, the way I've logged into Common App and I've given myself a username and a password, that's going to stay the same when I roll it over. But the things that are college specific are not going to roll over. There's something called FERPA, which is giving it's a privacy law that protects your privacy unless you give permission to the high schools that you've attended to release information about you. And that does not roll over. Things like college, recommendations, anything that is specific to a college does not roll over. So let's actually get started. To begin, you're actually going to create, you should create a new email account just for your college applications. And I say that because most teenagers don't check their email like every day, and colleges will communicate with you by email. Eventually, they may communicate with you by text as well. But if you create an email that is just for college applications, and students give parents access to that email. Remember, it's not your personal email. It's just for college applications. You may find that it's just much easier to keep track of things and to check for messages from colleges in a timely manner. And of course, if you're working with us for your college counseling, it's also the email that we would like to use to communicate with you. You'll have to create a password, and you can see the requirements for the password. It's not that different from many other places where you would, like, Amazon or Bloomingdale's or wherever you decide to, create an account of what the requirements are. But please save your email and password. In fact, after you use it in Common App, even Common App will ask if you want it saved, so that each time you log into Common App, you don't have to put in your username and password again. But keep track of it. Other tips. There are certain things that you really should talk to your parents about before you start. For example, you should discuss with them, where you're going to apply, and hopefully you'll agree on where you're applying. But as you add colleges to Common App, which you don't have to do all at once, you can do it, throughout the next several months. You can also take off colleges that you've decided not to apply to. It is important to understand about your parents' education, how far they went. Did they graduate from high school? Did they graduate from college? Did they get an advanced degree? Where did they go to college? And what degrees did they get? Because Common App does ask those questions. A really important question, and it doesn't really have, I'd say, that much to do with Common App, but in general, it's very important to have an understanding between student and parents what the budget is for college and how much financial aid you need, or merit-based aid. Many colleges are incredibly generous to students and give them merit-based aid that does not have to be repaid. Many other colleges just, do need-based aid, but it is something that I would strongly suggest that you talk about before you actually get started. And you're going to find that Common App has just, dozens of data entry fields where you're filling in information or answering a question. And I'm going to suggest that you, in fact, I'll demand, you really must capitalize appropriately in all data entry fields. If you're putting in your address and you live at, let's say, 8 Brandywine Drive, which is where I used to live in New Jersey, I'm going to capitalize Brandywine. I'm going to capitalize Drive. The first letter of any response in a data entry field should be capitalized, and it's for consistency. Not all fields on Common App are required. If they are required, there'll be an asterisk next to it. If there is no asterisk, it's optional. But I'm going to tell you that nothing is really optional other than the COVID-19 essay question. I'm not sure why they even still have it, but you'll see what I mean when we get to it. But understand that the word optional in college admission really means it's required. And once you complete either a section or a page of Common App, there'll be this little green check mark to show you that it's done. very important to have a copy of your transcript for filling out one part of the Common App if you're doing the page called Courses and Grades, but also part of Common App will ask for your GPA and your rank. So you'll want to be sure that the transcript that you use is the one that was issued after your junior grades were in and a rank was recalculated. You'll want to know your school-based counselor's email address because it will ask for his or her email address as well as that counselor's full name. You need to know the courses that you're taking next year. There's something that asks for your current or most recent courses, but what it's really referring to are your senior year courses. And you'll see that once we get into the Common App, that at the top right of every Common App page, there's a button that says Preview, which when you press it, you'll actually see exactly what the colleges will see. And it's a great idea for like more easily checking your work, either as you go or perhaps after you've done a few pages. So creating an account. Actually, let me just stop and ask Kathy if there have been any questions yet.
We have one question, how you can filter the requirements grid to only see the colleges on the students list.
Okay, that's a great question, which was, how do you filter the requirements grid to see only the colleges on your list? I promise I'm going to show you that because you can either list all roughly 1,100 colleges or you can list only your colleges. So I'll get to that when I start working on Common App itself. But when you start Common App for the very first time, this is the opening screen, at least for this year. I don't know whether they'll change the picture for next year, but you'll see that button at the bottom left that says Start Your Application. And you're pretty sure that everyone who's listening tonight is going to be applying as a first-year student. But if there are educational consultants who are listening and you want to create a practice account, I would suggest that you do it as an education professional. Or if a parent wants to just see how the whole Common App works, parent can sign on, as a parent. The reason an educational consultant or a parent should not sign on as a first-year student, as you will find that you're going to get lots of emails or texts from colleges. And I can tell you that there have been some years that I've signed on as a student, and there's also a place in Common App that you can give yourself a nickname, or, if you have a nickname. So I told Common App that my nickname was Stinky. And I can tell you that I periodically got emails like from Tufts, from Stanford, from different schools that I sort of fooled around with and put on my Common App. And they said, "Dear Stinky." So I knew where it came from. Anyway, when you're going to create your account, and I'm not going to go live for this part because it's very straightforward. This is basically the information that you're going to be entering. And it's really like your name, your address, your phone number, and the fact that you are, your age. Basically, that's just the basics for creating the account. And once you created your account, you will get an email that looks just like this from Common App. And it's going to give you your application ID, which, by the way, shows up at the top right of every Common App screen. And it gives you your username, which I would strongly suggest, doing your email address as your username. Your password will also doesn't actually show up for sure on this, but that's the email that you'll get. And you do want to write this information down, even though it's readily available. Okay, let's do an overview of the basic parts of Common App before we go live. As soon as I create my account, this is the screen that I'm going to see. And you can see at the very top right, there's my Common App ID and my username. It's welcoming me by my first name, not by Stinky. And it's a way that I can sign out, although you can actually just end without signing out. So at the very top, this is basically, I'd say, Common App's menu. And the dashboard in my colleges have very, very similar information. It's really just a list of the colleges that you have selected to apply to. They're organized a little bit differently from each other. The tab for Common App is going to open up for you all of the common pages. This will let you search for colleges to add to your list, and this has some great financial aid resources. And on the right of every Common App screen, there is a help screen where you can get information about that particular page that's up, or you can ask for even more, more help, but it's there on every single screen. So let's go into a little bit greater detail now, the dashboard. So I have selected applying to Harvard, Hofstra, and Northeastern, a somewhat unlikely combination, but nonetheless, I just, chose 3 schools. And you can see that at some point in this list, you're actually going to get their deadline dates. They don't come up right away. There's some information you'll have to give to Common App. But in this case, you can see that I've actually started working on these applications, and that's why it's showing me that the application or the supplement, is in progress. And if I were to click, let's go back here a minute, on Harvard, where it says show more details just below Harvard, this is what is going to come up. And it's going to give me a little bit more nitty gritty of the status of different parts of my application. My colleges has that same college list, but you can see now many more fit on here because down the left-hand side is just the list of the colleges. So there, it starts with Harvard, Hofstra, Northeastern. Go back to this. That's what that started with. And they are listed in alphabetical order. And if you were to click on the down arrow, so on Northeastern, if I clicked on that down arrow next to it, it opens up much more data about Northeastern. If I needed to call them, if I needed to mail something, if I wanted to get to their website, if I needed to know all the different deadlines, there's a lot more information further below. This page is actually going to be reorganized and just, I guess, easier to find what you're looking for on it when Common App comes up again on August the 1st. So it'll look a little bit nicer than it does now, but it is a great way to get more information about a particular college or go to its website. So let's look at, from now, the under Common App itself. These are all those 6 or 7, depending on the college, common pages. And this is an overview that I created last year. That's a list of every conceivable kind of information that you are asked for and where. So it's the education page that's going to show my current or most recent, which really means senior, courses, my future plans. The writing page is where I'm going to have my personal statement. The family page is where I'm going to fill in information about my parents and my siblings. So I just thought it would give a pretty neat overview to be able to see the kinds of information you'll be asked for on your Common App. And remember what I said before, you can make changes after submitting to one college, and before submitting to the next college. One of the primary places where our students will make changes is something called additional information that I promise I will get to when I describe the writing page. But there are a few other pages that you're going to probably make some changes to between colleges. So let's get into a little bit more nitty-gritty detail. When I click on that Common App tab at the top, what comes up on the left is a list of all of those common pages. The first 6 are from profile through writing, will be what every college gets. And the last one, called courses and grades, will only go to a select number of colleges. These are colleges that are having you do essentially some of their dirty work, because you'll be entering the name of every course that you've had, the category it falls in, is it a math, is it a science, the number of credits when you took it, the grade that you got, because this will help colleges automate the calculation of your GPA. Sometimes they want you to send your actual transcript in addition to doing this, but there's not a lot of colleges that have you complete the courses and grades page. But you can get a feeling now of what, say, the profile page begins to look like. And because I've already created an account, it shows my first name, my last name, which is the name that I gave it on this particular account. I didn't give it a middle name when I originally created the account. I don't think it asks for the middle name until now. Okay. So let's go. The next page is the family page, where it's asking about mom, dad, siblings. Notice that on the left-hand side, that list of pages, those that have the green check next to it, like profile testing and activities, that means the page is done. And those that don't, like family, education, etc., means that you still have work to do on those pages. This little green check mark is pretty important. There's one area where you'll see it's a little misleading, and I'll talk about that as we get to it. There's that preview button I told you about, and it will be on the top right of every Common App page, so that you can see everything sort of at one fell swoop on that page, as opposed to having to scroll all the way down the page to see things. So here's the preview of my profile page. And trust me, if I were doing this on the actual Common App, I'd be scrolling so that you could see all of this information. Okay. On the college search screen, there is an area near the top that says college or city name. So if I were to put the word Boston in there, you'll see that after that, it will give me every college that is either in the city of Boston, or, and so maybe it's Suffolk University, or it's any college that has the word Boston in its name, like Boston College or Boston University. But beware, there may be some colleges that have the word Boston in their name that are not in Boston. Well, anyway, I'll come to it afterwards, but this is how you're going to be able to search for a college, look up information about it, and perhaps add it to your list. And financial aid is lots of great information about financial aid. In fact, here is my whole list. And if I want to learn about the financial aid process at each of these colleges, these are the ones that are on my list because I've already created my list. I can go to this page and I could say, click on Santa Clara University, and it will tell me how financial aid works at Santa Clara. So it's very cool information that can be, there's some general information about applying for financial aid, and very specific information for the colleges to which you are applying. So in terms of getting started, I mentioned that you could search by college or city name, or by any of these things, like what their policy is for SAT or ACT, or how much their fee is, or when their deadline is. And I'm going to get into my Common App. So this is a different one that I just created yesterday, to give you like a whole blank Common App. So here we go. By the way, at the very top of my screen, this bar here, I actually have the link to Common App so that I can log into Common App without having to type, www.commonapp.org or even just commonapp.org. But when Common App starts, it automatically opens up into my college list. So this was a list I created for just, for tonight's webinar. And someone asked before about the requirements grid. So let's do this. If I click on application requirements, it brings up the requirements grid only for my colleges. And you can see that it's got the names. It tells me whether the college has early decision 1, early decision 2, early action, what its application plans is. basically almost all the data that you need for the colleges to which you're applying. The other cool thing that you can do with it is you can download it, and you could save it on your computer. You download it as a PDF, or if you're clever, you can copy this whole thing to an Excel spreadsheet if you'd like to look at it that way. But this was just my colleges. What if I say I want all the colleges? This is now, oh, it's interesting. It is not giving me, I'm not sure. Oh, hold on a minute. I can go through all the pages. When I download it as a PDF, I can scroll through the whole thing and see the requirements for every college. So as a college counselor, I actually download this to my laptop. I have a shortcut key, so with one key press, I can bring it up and I can look up something easily for a student to say, oh yes, they do have 2 rounds of early decision or early action, or, oh, they only require 1 recommendation. So it's just pretty cool for me as a counselor to have instant access to it, but it's great for a family to have the access of, like, when are all the deadline dates, who's got early action, etc. And just sort of to quickly go through this, if I want to see all the deadline dates, one way to do it is I can click on my preferred term. I can say I'm applying for fall 2024. You're not going to do this because this is this year's application. You're not going to want to do things like the deadline dates until everything has rolled over. Let me go back into the dashboard. And here's where I can show more details. So this is all the detail, about Emory. And it doesn't matter whether I go into something through the dashboard or through my colleges. I can go into Emory this way. I get more information this way, but a lot more to scroll through to see that, yes, they want my personal statement. They have 2 additional questions specifically for them. They have some additional details that they need, and they don't have something called the supplement. And if I decide I don't want to apply to Emory, I can take it away right here. Or I can, go into the dashboard. I can take away a college here just by putting in it, clicking on the X. Or in my colleges, I actually have to open it up in order to remove it. And your college list will roll over. If it turns out that one of the colleges you picked decides not to participate next year in Common App, then you're not going to see its information. But so far, we haven't heard of any colleges that are in Common App now that are not going to participate next year. And there will be new ones added. Okay. So pretty much the key takeaways are the fact that I could go into the college search. I didn't show you this by other means than just saying Boston. If I look at the filters, I can say I'm really late to the game. I want a college who has a deadline in 2004. Let's see, June 10th. I want it on or after today. It would be great if it didn't have an application fee. If it didn't require the personal statement. Let's see that test scores or we'll say that they're not required. Let's say that recommendations are not required. It tells me there's 155 colleges like that. If I click on that, I'm getting that list. So for a student who is really late to the game and is applying now in June, and I don't want to write an essay and I don't want to get any recommendations, it's giving me a list of colleges. There may be some that you hadn't heard of. So far, I've seen 2 that I know, and I actually love Dean College. It's a phenomenal school for, I'd say, the C or C plus student. But anyway, the college search is incredibly useful. So you can search for by a lot of different things. And again, these are all the things that you can access from your college list to be able to tour it, to find admissions data, whether they not need requirements or not, when their deadlines are. Through Common App, you can only apply to 20 colleges. If you want to apply to 21, you're either going to use you're going to use the second Common App with a different username, or you're going to use the college's own app, or you might use something called the Coalition app. But the Common App itself is limited to 20 colleges. And it's not like you can say, well, I'm going to apply to these 20. And then after I apply to a few of them, I'm going to take some of them off and add others, which is something you can do with the FAFSA, the financial aid forms. But you can't do that here. So 20 colleges, is your limit. And quite frankly, you shouldn't be applying to 20 colleges. We try to limit our students who we work with privately to about a dozen, maybe, a few more than that. But if you have a really well-balanced, well-researched college list, you don't need to apply to 20 colleges. 12, 14 will do it. And some of our students only apply to 6 or 8. So there's that requirements grid. It's another takeaway from that college search. And again, I like saving it as a PDF, and it is one of the downloads for this webinar. So you can get this year's grid and get an idea of what colleges are on it and what some of the requirements are in terms of testing or application fee or recommendations. So let's start entering information into the Common App, and I'm going to go immediately into the profile page. So I'm on Common App right now. It came up with the profile page, and let me just preview it for you first. And this is all I have in there. This is just the information that got put into my registration when I created my account. There's nothing else that's in there yet. And this is how colleges will actually see it. They don't see it looking sort of this kludgy. Okay, so Alana's middle name might be Catherine, and she doesn't have a suffix, and she has no information under a former legal name. And her date of birth, this came over from when I first registered. And if I hit continue, it's going to go into the next category the next section called address, or I could just click on address, or I can decide I don't want to do address next. I want to skip down to language, but I'll click continue and the address area will open up. So this is the address that I put in when I first created my account. If I want to change it, I can. If I remove it, it's going to ask me for another address because you have to have an address, but I'll just leave it the way it is. It does ask if there's an alternate address or a temporary address. So for example, if you are in boarding school, you might send your anything from a college to a temporary or alternate address. So if I said that, it's going to give me room to add an address, and whether it's temporary or not. And so my boarding school might only be until, let's say, June 4th. And I could add that whole boarding school address. But for now, I am going to say there's no alternate address because I just don't want to take the time to fill one out. So a few more details about my contact information. That's the phone number I gave, and I'm going to tell them that this is my mobile number, and that's what I would advise giving. And if you want a backup number because you don't always answer your phone or you want to be sure you don't miss a call, you could say that you could give your home number, or you could give another mobile. Maybe it's, mom's or dad's, but for now, again, I'm going to say no other telephone. Okay, my demographics. Okay, so this question has changed a few times in the past. And by the way, when it comes to rollover, if they change the way they ask a question, then your answer itself will not roll over. So several years ago, all they had was male and female. Then I think they had male, female, and non-binary. Then I think it was last year that they added, add another gender. So kids who had done their Common App before the rollover, their answer did not roll over because they might have answered differently based on the fact that the question was now being asked differently. But I'm going to say that Alana is female and that her legal sex is female. I believe the X was also added last year. Pronouns. So you can see that this is an optional question. There's no red asterisk afterwards. If I go back up here, let's see. Gender is optional. Legal sex is not optional. So this, somebody who wants to say that, hey, I was born female, but I don't want to tell you what I go by now. Although my advice is to answer every question. So I'm going to say my pronouns are she and her. I have never been in the armed forces. Are you Hispanic or Latino, Latina, Latinx? If you are from Spain, Central America, or anywhere in South America, even Brazil, where your language is Portuguese, not Spanish, you should respond yes. And sometimes it's confusing to determine, am I really Hispanic? Like I wasn't born there. But my grandparents were born there. Basically, the answer that I've gotten over the years from Common App, and I do ask periodically, is if you identify as Hispanic, even though it was your grandparents who were born there, but you feel that there are Hispanic traditions in your life, and you've got an abuelo and abuela, your grandparents, then you can certainly say yes to being Hispanic. There is no rule in terms of how many generations does it go back before you have to say, no, you're not Hispanic. It's up to you if you feel you identify that way. There should be no more advantage to saying you're Hispanic or Latino because of the Supreme Court ruling last year. But there are ways to get that in an essay or in an extracurricular activity if you want to talk about the impact, let's say, on your life of your heritage. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I took that away by accident. I'm going to say I'm not Hispanic. Well, let's say if I said, yes, I'm Hispanic, then it's going to ask me, what best describes me. I might say Cuba. And for the part of me that's, regardless of how I identify myself, it's like, how else do I identify myself? Because maybe I'm also Black and Hispanic, or American Indian and Hispanic. It just depends upon what your heritage is. I'm going to say that I'm white. And my white background comes from Europe. It might also come from the Middle East, because it depends how many, if I go back and I look at, my mother and her mother and her father. And so you might have a very interesting heritage. And I would take full advantage of the opportunity to share that in Common App. So what languages are you proficient in? And there's no description of what proficient means. So most of us are proficient in at least one language, but let's do two and see how that works. Select language. This should really, typically I say it should be your first language. So for many of you listening, it's probably English. And not only is it my first language, but I also speak it, I read it, I write it, and it might be spoken at home, depending upon my household. And let's assume that my second language is Spanish. And it's not my first language. It might be my first language. I could have two first languages, but I am able to speak it. I can read it and I can write it. And my parents and I even speak it at home. So you can see that you can click multiple options below, the language itself. Or maybe I don't really speak it and it's not spoken at home, but I can read it and write it. So It's whatever you want to make it, and it's as many languages as you feel you are proficient in it. But again, there is no definition of proficient. It's left up to you. So my geography and nationality. So where was I born? I'm going to say that I was born in the United States of America, that I was born in Palm Beach Gardens, the state. Oops, I have to scroll down to actually do it. Although I think I could have typed just an F for Florida and it would scroll down there for me. But let's say that I actually lived a couple of years in, I don't know, someplace else. And okay, so you have to be thinking that even though you're, let's say, in the summer before your senior year filling this out, think about how old you will be at the time you apply to college. So let's just say I'm only 17 now, but by the time I apply to college, I'm going to be 18. And I lived 2 years in another country. So I'm going to say that I've lived 16 years in this country. It doesn't really ask me what other country, but it can figure out that it's 2 years in another country. And my citizenship status is, for many of you listening, you're probably U.S. citizens or U.S. nationals, but you might have, one of the others. Whoops, perhaps you are a citizen of a non-U.S. country. And if you are, it's going to ask you the countries of citizenship. Oh, let me just see something. Is there an option for dual? Yes, let's say I'm a U.S. dual citizen. Because I have U.S. citizenship, it is going to ask me for my social security number. This is one of the, I should tell you, this is one other thing that's really, really, really optional. If you are not applying for need-based financial aid, you do not need to fill out your social security number. But if you are going to be filing for financial aid, and the form that all colleges use is called the FAFSA, it's the free application for federal student aid, then you must put in your social security number. But watch what happens when I put it in. So I put it in. That's not really my social security number. It X's out the first 6 characters, so that if 5 characters, so that if someone is looking at your application, like you're sharing it with your counselor or something, he or she will not see your social security number. Many people do not like to share their social security number. If you must make sure that you know your social security number and have it written down somewhere that only you know where it is if you have to look it up. But I would suggest leave it blank if you're not going to be filling out the FAFSA. Otherwise, you should fill it in. So that really is optional. I'm going to take it out because I just don't want to put it in there. And my countries of citizenship, because I said I was a U.S. dual citizen, maybe I also have citizenship with Cuba. I don't think I need to put the United States in here because I said I was a U.S. dual citizen, but just to be sure, let me just put in a U and see UNIT. No, so it doesn't even give me the United States. But maybe I also have citizenship with the United Kingdom. So you can put in as many countries as you have citizenship with. And of course, for many of you, it's probably going to be just the fact that you are a U.S. citizen, and so this other question went away. And a common app fee waiver. If you are on free and reduced lunch here in Palm Beach County, and I think they may call it the same thing in other Florida counties, you may very well be entitled to a fee waiver. If you're not on free and reduced lunch, but have some other, financial hardship, you may be entitled to a fee waiver because it does cost money to apply to Common App. If none of that is true for you, I would say I don't meet any of the criteria. These are the different criteria. But as I said, students who are on free and reduced lunch usually qualify. But there's a whole list of things that you can qualify under. I'm going to say I don't qualify for a fee waiver. Okay. There are also free online mentors that can help students. I would say if you want help for any of these parts of the process, and it doesn't say anything about having to be an underprivileged or under-resourced student. Anybody, I think, can say yes or no. I've never said yes to it. So I'm just going to leave it as no, I don't need that free help from UStrive. Okay, I have actually just finished the profile page. And in fact, if I go back to the profile page and I press preview, that's actually a lot easier to look at and say, oh, I made a mistake somewhere, and I can go in and fix it. And then I just X out of it. But when I finished it, it automatically moved me to the next page, which is the family page. Let's see what the takeaways are in here. Okay. Those three things, the social security number, your citizenship or visa information, because if you're here on a visa, it will be asking for a visa. And if you're eligible for, a fee waiver. I showed you how for a first language, I pick everything. Speak, read, write, spoken at home. Oops, sorry. Don't try to hide your ethnicity and just say, well, gee, I think I'm going to be at a disadvantage if they know that I'm, white. So I'm just not going to say that. Number one, Supreme Court ruling doesn't allow for that. But even if you believe colleges are not going to, are going to just march to the beat of their own drummer, still be completely honest about your ethnicity, and definitely respond yes to the Hispanic Latino question. If you identify with that, even if you're not speaking Spanish. And with that, we're ready to move on to the family page. Okay. Parents' marital status. Lots of things to choose from. I don't know. I'm going to say my parents were never married. And with whom do I make my permanent home? I can say I do live with both my parents. I'm not going to list any step parents. And I don't have any children. And I'm going to go down now to parent one. And again, I could have just clicked continue, or I can go right to parent one. And I'm going to say parent one is my mother. I could have said parent one was, my father. But I'm going to say, parent one. And by the way, if you live with one parent and you don't have information about the other parent, you can say that. That, you could say that I only live with one parent, but I don't have much information about the other parent. And then you won't be expected to know everything about that parent. My mother is living. Her prefix is doctor. And her name is Sharon. She doesn't have a middle initial, or at least if she does, I don't know what it is. And her last name is capital Horchow. And her maiden name, that's her, the name when she was single, might have been Smith. And she doesn't have a suffix like, junior or the third. And my mother's email is drh@gmail.com. I'm going to give her mobile phone number. This is the fact that it's a 1 if it's United States. Otherwise, if your mother's in some other country, you would pick a different country code. And her phone number is I wonder what happens if I type it in without the dashes. It put them in. I wonder what happens if I type it in this way. Okay, so even if I typed it in with the parentheses around the area code, it's still, this is the format that Common App likes for at least a US phone number. And her occupation, let's see if they have doctor or physician. Her employment status is that she is self-employed, so it's her own practice, and her highest education level. And I want to go, these are listed pretty much in order. And I'm going to say she went to graduate school. Let's say she did her undergraduate and her graduate all at one university. And I have to find the college. So I'm going to search by college name, and I'm going to say, I think she went to a school called something like Cornell. But did you know that there's several Cornells here listed? So her undergraduate was at Cornell University. I clicked on that. I'm going to say continue. And the number of degrees she got from Cornell, let's say she got 2 degrees from Cornell. She got her first degree was a bachelor's degree. When did she get it? Let's say she got it in 2012. Then her next degree was in medicine. It actually probably should say healthcare, since it has dentist in here, whatever. But anyway, and the year she received that would have been 2016. So you see, that's when I meant that before you sit down to at least work on the education page of Common App, talk to mom or dad to find out where they went to college, if they went to college, because I could have done it quite a bit differently. I might have said that her highest education level was she graduated from high school. And you see, the rest of those questions went away because it's not going to ask me where she went to college. But then I say, oh no, I made a mistake. She really did graduate from college. It put me back to where I was before. So I can fix a mistake if I made one. With parent 2, I might say that's my father. Let's say I don't have, no, let's say, is he living? Yes. Oh, and let's just say that I have limited information. Like, none of these fields are required. So for now, I'm just going to leave it blank, just in the interest of moving through this a little bit more quickly, because it is a long webinar, and I apologize for that, but there's a lot to cover. I'm going to go into sibling, and let's say that if I'm an only child, 0, and then I'm done with this page, or I might say I have one sibling. Her name is Amanda. Her last name is Rabinovitz. Let's just say that she's 9 years old. I always wanted a little sister. I never had one. Okay, so now you can see that both profile and family are checked. Let's go back into family for a moment. Notice that these sections all have a green check mark, means that they're done. I can't see a check mark on household while I'm on it, but let's just say that I go into parent 2. I can look above it and see that the others have check marks. So when every section has a green check mark, there'll be a green check mark over here on the left-hand side. And if I went into preview, I can see everything that I put in. And again, it's much easier to see things this way and realize, oh my God, I made a mistake, and go back in and change it. Okay. Some takeaways. These are the things that you really should find out from mom and dad beforehand. And even things like, if I didn't say she was self-employed, it would ask me where does she work? And then I need the actual name of, say, the medical practice. Let's jump into the next page, which is education. And then I'm going to stop after this to see if there's any questions. Okay. So the most recent high school, and let's just assume, to make things easier, that I've really been at the same high school all the way through. My high school name, I'm going to say, is Spanish River So I just typed the word Spanish in, and there's Spanish River Community High School. So I clicked on that, and then I have to go down to the bottom to press continue. But let's just say that you put in a name like XXXXX. I don't see my high school on the list. And now I could actually type in the name of, it's giving me the opportunity to type in its name and its address. But I think I'll go back and actually tell it Spanish River. I just typed the first 4 letters, and I have, Spanish River was one of the choices. Whoops. And I have to scroll down to continue. Oh, looks like I didn't choose it. I thought I did. Okay, so it's selected and continue. Okay. Actually, let me do something a little different. Let's change that. Let's just say that I go to American Heritage of Boca del Rey. By the way, there's an American Heritage in Georgia, North Carolina, Montana, Texas, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, a bunch more. But I'm going to say that I go to American Heritage of Boca del Rey. And let's say I'm a lifer there. I started when I was in kindergarten. Go down to the bottom and continue. So there's American Heritage. Date of entry is not looking for the date I started kindergarten. Why it says date of entry is beyond me, but it's really the date of entry into high school. So if I'm graduating high school in 2025, right, that means my senior year starts in 24, my junior year starts in 23, my sophomore year starts in 22, and my freshman year starts in 21. So there's 2 ways I could enter the date. Let's just say that I'm pretty sure I started high school roughly on 8/15, and the actual date I don't think matters that much, 2021. Okay, so it didn't matter the actual date. It's just August of 2021. The other way to have done this is to click on the calendar. You'll pick the year, and then you'll pick the month. So there's 2 ways to enter a date. It's not a boarding school. And by the way, if you go to a school that is a boarding school, but you don't board, I would say that it's not a boarding school. At least it's not for you. And did you or will you graduate from this school? Yes, I will. My graduation date. Okay, now I'm not going to be, I don't think I can do this now. Can I do? Oh, yes, I can. I can say my graduation date is going to be in 2025. And American Heritage graduates actually in June. And there's been no change in my progression. In other words, I'm not graduating early or late. I'm not taking a gap year, just a normal student. Continue. Other schools or high schools, other secondary or high schools. You might be tempted, if you've been at the same school all the way along, to say 0. But what about if you've taken a course through FLVS? So I might have to say that I have one other high school. I want to find it. And I just typed Florida Ver. It's not Florida Virtual Full-Time, Florida Virtual School. I'm not sure why it says it's in Orlando. I guess maybe that's where its headquarters is. Continue. And my from and to date. So let's just say that as a sophomore, I took a course to enrich my education. So my sophomore year started in 2022. So maybe it was August 2022. Let's see how it takes that. Yeah, okay, it spelled it out. It took away my comma. And I finished it in May of 2023. And now it wants to know why I left a school. So this isn't like, hey, I was thrown out because I did some pretty bad things my freshman year. I went somewhere else my sophomore year. I didn't have any friends there. I left after my sophomore year, went somewhere else. But, this was a completely different reason. I might just say, as a sophomore, I took AP Biology through Florida virtual school to enrich my curriculum. Okay, and you actually have up to 250 words that you can use. And I used, over here it tells me I used 15 of the 250. And that's good enough. But if there was a reason that maybe you moved, so you had to change schools, maybe you were asked to leave, and then that becomes a whole topic for another webinar. But honestly, I can't remember ever having a student who was asked to leave for perhaps one incident of cheating or doing something non-violent. They've all got into college. I even had a student who spent a year in jail, and he did get into college. Anyway, colleges and universities, this is, have you attended any colleges? But for instance, let's say you take dual enrollment courses. That's college. What if you did a summer program on a college campus? So let's just make it simple and just do one. And I did a summer program. You see, I can pick dual enrollment and say that, it might have been Palm Beach State, or maybe it was a summer program through Summer Discovery at the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of one of their wonderful business programs. Then, that would be a summer program. And if you got credit, or not. So I'm just going to say it was a summer program. And let's say that I went in July of 2023 and I went until August of 2023. I was, just there for the summer. I did not earn a degree. So I can leave this blank because it's not a required field. And besides which, it doesn't have something to say, no degree earned. Okay, grades. So this is approximately how many kids are in your class that will be graduating, and it's an approximation. So even though this number may change early in your senior year, it may change more than once, you're not going to go in here and change it each time. So let's see, I'm at American Heritage. I'm going to say that they're graduating 86 students. I'm just guessing. So American Heritage does not report rank. So I can just say class rank is none. But if I were at a public school here in Florida, it would be an exact rank and I'd have to put it in. But so let's actually pretend for now that it's an exact rank. And so my rank might be number 3 in my class. And let's pretend just for a moment that I'm at a public high school, and the ranks in our public high schools here in Florida happen to be based on a weighted GPA, not on an unweighted. And if you're not sure, by the way, if you say that there is no rank, those other fields go away. But if you're not sure how the ranking works or whether it's weighted or unweighted, you can always ask your counselor. Okay. This is the one that I'd say the most mistakes happen in terms of the GPA scale. Most high schools around here, at any rate in Florida, are on a 4.0 scale. You may have a counselor that says to you, oh no, we're not on a 4.0 scale, we're on a 5.0 scale because your weighted GPA can be well above 4. And in some schools, and American Heritage is one example, my weighted GPA, because of the way they do their weighting, is above a 5. Okay. Or it could be that you go to Oxbridge Academy, they're on a 100-point scale. There's the 100. Or maybe I am graduating with what's called a French baccalaureate. They're on a 20-point scale. And then there are some New England boarding schools, I believe, that have something like a 9 or a 10-point scale. But if you go to a school where an A is 4 and a B is 3 and a C is 2, etc., you're on a 4-point scale because a 4.0 is an A. I'm just talking unweighted. Okay, so if you go to a public high school or most of our local private schools, your GPA scale is a 4, and here it wants to know your cumulative GPA. So you should only fill this in after you have a copy of your transcript that goes through your junior year, and you have a choice of putting in your weighted or your unweighted. It really doesn't matter, although my preference is I like to put in a weighted, especially if it's over a 4.0. If your weighted isn't much different than your unweighted, you might want to do the unweighted. But honestly, it doesn't matter. Colleges recalculate. I'm not sure why they even ask this, or they use the GPA on your transcript. But I'm going to say that my weighted is a 4.32, and that it's weighted. Okay. Remember that the Common App was designed so that you pretty much fill it out when you are a senior. It may have only been, and I'm going to guess to say 7 or 8 years ago, that they added the rollover feature, which meant that, juniors or even sophomores could be working on their Common App. But when it says the current or most recent year courses, you have to think in terms of the fact that, oh, I'm a senior, it's September or it's October, and I'm filling out my application. So what you are reporting is going to be your senior year courses. Unless you happen to be someone who has graduated high school already and you didn't apply to college, you took a year off and now you're applying to college. But then it would still be your most recent courses would have been your senior courses. So it wants to know how many courses you're taking. I'm just for simplicity going to say I'm only taking 3 because I don't want to be here all evening filling this out. And my school gives semester grades, and that's assuming that what's on your transcript is semester grades. If what's on your transcript is year-end grades, then you have to say that, the course scheduling system, well, no, it still wouldn't be yearly because I think some of your courses are 1-semester courses. Chances are your semester, you might be at a private school that is trimester, and most boarding schools are trimester. But I'm going to say I'm on a semester system and I'm only taking 3 courses. So the subject, my first one is, I'm going to say calculus. Whoops. Okay, I guess I have to go down through this way. I'm going to say that it's calculus. The course name is AP Calculus BC. Now the course level. I'm not sure why this other one popped up in here, but if okay, you can see that there's a lot of different course levels that you can pick depending upon how your school records it. There are some you may not find on here, like if you're at Oxbridge and you have honors seminar, you're not going to see that as one of the, I guess, one of the types of courses. And I would say you should absolutely ask your counselor at school what to call it. I'm also going to tell you that other than perhaps PE, I never call anything regular or standard. To me, the lowest level is, let's see, here it is, college prep. That to me is the lowest level. I don't like saying regular because regular to me is like lower level and it's not geared for kids who are going to college. You can even put your PE, if you have PE senior year or health, you can even say that that's college prep because it's a requirement, for graduating high school and going on to college. But the course that I'm just talking about is AP. And by the way, if I wanted to give the course the name, I could have just called it Calculus BC because down here I say AP. But I just want to reinforce the fact that it's AP. And it's schedule. This is a full year course. Okay, if it was only a 1-semester course, I would check either first semester or second semester. My next subject, let's find it here, math, biology, physics. Oh, let's say I'm taking physics. and the course name could be AP Physics C Mechanics. And I'm also going to pick AP. And I'll say it's a full year course at my school. I'm just trying to make this easy, but you can see that there's lots of alternative ways of picking, well, not alternative, but there's a huge list of selections. Let's say that my next course was, let's see, where's an English? English. And maybe I am taking ACE Literature. And the level of that, accelerate. Here it is. Those are Cambridge courses. And maybe it's also a full year. So what you need to do is look, write out a list of what courses you have for next year. And let's just say that as a senior, you're going to have 1 semester of government and 1 semester of economics. Okay, that counts as 2 courses, and you'll be able to select one as first semester and the other as second semester. So you might have a full year of English, a full year of math, a full year of science, 1 semester of Gov, 1 semester of economics. Maybe you also have AP Computer Science, and you might have pottery. Okay, so that comes out to 7 courses. So in truth, they're not all full year courses, but for each entry, you have to count it as just 1 more. If I continue, I'm going into the honors, and honors does not mean an honors level course. It means things like honor society. So I could say my first honor is, well, let's just say it's National Honor Society. Okay, and I have to tell you that every honor society is the word honor, not honors. So it's not like National Science Honors Society. I see this all the time on applications. I swear it's just National Honor Society. And let's say that I was inducted in 11th grade. So that still counts for 11th grade. And I was in it for 12th grade. And it is a school recognition, but it's also a national recognition. Let's also say that I had the highest level of AP Scholar, which is now AP Scholar with distinction. I got that as a result of my finally taking the last, several AP tests in 11th grade. And it is only a national. Actually, I think it's an international. And I don't think it matters whether you put national or international. But let's say you had a whole bunch of honor societies, because I only have room for 5. So let's just say that I only have room for 3 more, but let's say that there's 7 more honor societies. Here's how I cheat. I might say National Honor Societies. I might say math, and that was in grades 9 through, not 8. They don't care about middle school, 9 through 12. I might say Spanish. Maybe that one was grades 10 through 12. Maybe I was also in the National Science Honor Society. That was 11 and 12. Let's say I was also the National Theater Honor Society, 9 through 12. How much more room do I have? I think there's 100 characters in here that you can use, and that includes punctuation and spaces. So that's an interesting way to sort of cheat, but it's not really cheating, to get in a whole bunch of honor societies. I noticed that I put the grades down for each of them specifically because they were not all in the same grades. If every one of my honor societies was, let's say, grades 11-12, then I don't have to list the grades individually up here. But since they were all different, and so I've had honor societies for all 4 years. Their school recognition and their national recognition. So, anything where you were honored, but these are academic honors. So it's not, an award you got for having the most community service hours, because these are related to academic achievements. Maybe you were in a national science fair and you got 3rd place. You could put, that in here. Maybe you're, debating at Blue Key at the University of Florida, and you came in and you were an octo finalist. Those are the kinds of things that you can add to honors. And some kids have no honors, and if you don't have any honors, just leave it blank and just say it's 0. Community-based organizations would be if you are getting support for your assistance, basically because you either go to an under-resourced school or because you're coming from a family with limited means. Then you would pick a number that represents the number of organizations that helped you. If you're coming from a pretty, well-heeled family or a well-resourced high school, it would be 0. But let's just say that you got help from some community resource. You'd have to list the organization. Ignore the thing that comes up at the right. This is just pulling up stuff that happens to be on my computer unrelated to this. But as you look at these, you can see that these are, for under-resourced students. So it may be that, you're getting supported by one of those and you're going to give some, information about it. For now, I'm just going to leave it blank and say, nope, I'm not getting outside help because I'm an under-resourced student. This next one, future plans. This is one that absolutely can change from college to college, because maybe I'm applying to some colleges as a business major and other colleges as an engineering major. And that's actually not that uncommon. So let's just say that, before I do that, I'm going to go into my career interests. I want to say that I want to be a business executive, or let's say business owner. I like that better, a business owner. Then the highest degree I would want is an MBA, which is a very common degree to shoot for if you're going for business. Yes, you can get a doctorate in business. That's pretty rare. But if you're thinking about majoring in business, I would most likely pick MBA, Master of Business Administration, as the highest thing that you're going to go for. But let's just say that I don't want to be a business owner. Let's see if there's one here for engineering, or what the one is for engineering. Okay, it just says engineer. And therefore, my highest degree, well, it could be an MBA, because maybe I'm doing engineering and business. But I'm going to say that the highest degree I want is a PhD. Yes, I can be an engineer with just a bachelor's or a master's degree, but I'd like to show colleges that I'm really thinking further ahead, and I want to really get as much education as I can before I go out into the real world, assuming that that's true and that you're striving for, a high level degree. So then I would pick, PhD, and it also has an EDD, which is a doctorate in education. But let's also say that you have no idea what your career interest is, none whatsoever. I can say other, and if I say other, well, this doesn't. Maybe I want to be a bartender. I don't know, but I can put it in. But I'm probably, I'm unlikely to say something like that. I'm going to say I'm totally undecided, but I'm pretty sure I want to push for a high level degree and going for a doctorate. And if you're truly undecided, it is absolutely fine. Okay, this is not asking what your major is. It is just asking what your career interest is. So some kids really know they want to be, entrepreneurs, and they want to be engineers or nurses. Other kids say, I have no idea what kind of work I want to do, but I know that I want to get a great education. It's absolutely fine to do something like this. And I'm going to continue. Oh, something's not done in my education page. Look, there's no check after it. Let's go back in and look down here. Okay, colleges and universities. Oh, I didn't find the college. Okay, let's just say that I took a summer course through Summer Discovery, which is one of these pay-to-play summer programs, but they have some really great summer programs there. And one of them is at the University of Pennsylvania. I just did University PE. Okay, PENNSY. Okay, I'm not at Bloomsburg or Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Come on. Okay, it's alphabetical. University. Okay, so I was not in the pre-college program of general studies. I wasn't that. Okay, let me go back. Did I miss one here? College of Liberal and Professional Studies, Upward Bound. Okay, so it's nothing specialized like that. It's just plain old University of Pennsylvania. They don't list Wharton, which is where a management in the business world, leadership in the business world, LBW, is one of the best summer business programs you can take. Highly selective, even though it's pay to play and through Summer Discovery. Okay, so there it is. Now I should be able to go on. Let's see if I go to another page and I look up. Now my education page is done. And if I go back to the education page and I check preview, I can see everything that's in there. And it's, again, much easier to read in this format. And I could print it out if I really wanted to see hard copy of it. Okay, so takeaways from the education page. Okay, and these are things that I just want to reinforce. It's the date you started high school, and if you did take any courses virtually, how you would list them, what you would say about why you switched schools. You didn't really switch. You were just, enriching or enhancing your curriculum. And, if you've taken any summer courses or dual enrollment, that would all go under colleges and universities. Again, that 4.0 scale, I prefer the weighted GPA, and I would wait until you have that junior year transcript in hand to enter things like your class rank and your GPA. And remember, don't use regular as a level for your courses, college prep or higher, and they're definitely your senior year courses. And here is an example. This has a student who has more than 5 honors altogether. There's more than 5 honors. And there's how I combined all those honor societies. And I even abbreviated national, NATL, which is fine. I didn't leave a space before the left parenthesis for the grades because I didn't have room for it. I didn't spell out the word science. I just abbreviated it. And colleges will understand this. You only have 100 characters to elaborate on the name of, an honor, and that includes spaces and punctuation. And, with those, future plans, you should ensure that it's consistent. So if you're telling one college you're applying for mechanical engineering, you're better off saying that your goal is to be an engineer, not to be a nurse. You want to ensure consistency between what you will eventually tell each college, and you don't have to tell all colleges the same major, and what you're going to say is your career goal and the highest degree you hope to get. Let me see if there's questions that are coming in.
No, we have a few questions. So the first one is the data you enter in Common App shared with colleges before you submit?
That's a great question. Is the data that you enter in Common App shared with colleges before you apply? I believe the answer is no, other than your basic identifying information, and the fact, that you're what year you are in school, your name. I think just a couple of basics, are shared. And one of the things that I believe you're asked when you register is whether it's okay to share information about you with colleges. And honestly, I always say yes. And then in some places on Common App, you'll be asked if it's okay to be texted. And I would always say yes.
Is there a way to share your Common App profile with parents so they can look at financial aid options, etc.?
Okay, so is there a way to share your information with parents? Well, one way to share it with your parents is to give them your username and your password and tell them that under penalty of death, they don't change anything in your Common App. There is also a place to enter something called an advisor. That's not necessarily your counselor at school. It's not necessarily your educational consultant. It is someone who you will identify, and it could be your parents, that have read-only access to your application. And so you could name a parent as an advisor, and that parent would be able to get in with his or her own username and password to review your application.
And one more, is there a particular way that high school courses that were taken with FLVS should be entered, but they were taken when the student was still in middle school?
Okay. So the only time you're going to enter courses that were not your senior courses is in that extra page, common page of Common App called Courses and Grades. And when I get to that page, I will explain how to enter middle school or summer courses because they're entered a bit differently than you might think.
And that's all for now.
Okay. Testing page. This is the one that gets a little bit complicated because of test optional. So you have an opportunity, if you want to take advantage of it through Common App, to share your SAT, ACT, AP scores, for example. Let me just deal with SAT and ACT for now. Because so many colleges are test optional, you may choose to send your scores to some colleges, but not others. Of course, if a college is not test optional, like let's say any of our 12 state universities, in Florida, or let's say Dartmouth is now, or Stanford. No, Stanford doesn't start, I think, for another year yet. Or let's say Purdue University or University of Georgia or MIT. In fact, there is one of the handouts I believe is a list of colleges that are test optional. I think I've included that in the handouts. If for any reason I didn't, you can always email me to get that particular list. I copied it from another website. I actually gave credit to that website. But that information changes very, very quickly. And their information was current through early May. I know that Stanford just announced the other day, so I updated their list myself with Stanford. It had a couple small errors in there about UF and FSU that I also, corrected. But anyway, you may choose to share your scores with some colleges and not with all colleges. If a college is test optional and you are in the mid 50% of last year's accepted students, by all means, share your scores. If you are, let's say the mid-range is 1,200 to 1,400, and you've got a 1,230. There are some people who say you should wait till you're at the midpoint to share it. I think that you can share it if you're a little lower than the midpoint as well. Where it starts to become a little fuzzy, but I have a partial answer for you, is again, if that range is 1,200 to 1,400, and let's just say that you have an 1,150. But let's just say also that 1,150 is very high for your high school. And you can ask your counselor, because your counselor should have that information, and it may be on what's called your high school's profile of the range of SAT scores for kids from your high school. And maybe very few kids get as high as an 1,180. And so therefore I would share it because it is high for the group I'm coming from. And you are judged not as like in a vacuum. When colleges evaluate you, you're always being evaluated relative to what was available to you at your high school and to the peers at your high school. So you may find that you're coming back and forth to this testing page, and sometimes you have your scores in there and sometimes you don't. And you are going to want to make a list of which schools you're applying to are test optional, which ones are test blind, which means even if you send the score, they're going to ignore it, at least for SAT and ACT. That's not true for AP, IB, ACE, although not everybody accepts ACE either. But you definitely want to have a list of when scores are required or not. Okay, so the first question is whether or not I want to self-report scores. You're absolutely fine to say no and not have to worry about this and send official score reports to those colleges that you want to send it to. However, it does make things a lot easier for the colleges if you say, yes, I do want to self-report scores. And by the way, you may not know the answer to that yet because you may be, or maybe you're still planning on taking some tests and you want to see how you do before you answer this question. So this might be a part of a page that you leave blank until maybe after the August or the October SAT or the September ACT, so that you know how you want to answer it. But let's just assume for now that I already know that I have high enough scores for some of my colleges. So I'm going to say, yes, I do want to self-report. Let me take this out of here. It was left over from before. And it wants to know for what tests I want to self-report. And so there's a list that comes up. And let's say I've taken SAT and ACT. I don't have to send both. But if I know my SAT is definitely higher than my ACT, I'm going to pick SAT. SAT subject tests are no longer given. I'm not sure. And they haven't been given for about 4 years now. So I'm not sure why that's on here. It's unlikely that any of you listening would have taken them. But AP, they're actually called AP tests. They're not called AP subject tests. But if you have good AP scores or are planning to take some AP scores, either way, at the end of senior year, I would pick that. And so what do I mean by good? This, again, is something that would change. If I'm applying to the nation's most highly selective schools, any of the Ivies, or let's say Northwestern or Duke or Vanderbilt, the super selective schools who don't even require these subject tests, don't even require AP exams. If I have 4s or 5s, I definitely want to report them. I would not report a 3 or lower to any super selective school. And there's no definition of super selective. I can't tell you it's any school that has an admit rate of 10% or less. It's just if you know that the school is like wildly competitive, only send 4s and 5s. I would include my 3s if I'm applying to less selective, but still pretty highly selective schools. Like, for example, if I'm applying to the University of Florida or Florida State, they're both pretty darn selective, but I'm fine sending them a 3. A 3 is not going to hurt me. And I'm always should be sending my future test dates for AP. The same thing is true for IB. If you have any IB scores by the time you're applying to colleges, if they're 6s or 7s, you can send them to the nation's most selective schools. If they're 5, 6, or 7, you can still send them to pretty selective schools, not necessarily, the most selective schools. Cambridge, these are, could be your ACE exams. There are some colleges that don't accept ACE, don't do anything with it. You're not supposed to know. In fact, most of us don't even know for sure which ones do or don't accept ACE. So if you have really good ACE scores, I would send them no matter what. But the short story I can tell you is the last time I visited University of Southern California, and I think that might have been pre-COVID, so let's say it was 5 years ago, and I was meeting with a pretty high-level admission officer, and we were talking about AP and IB and how much they value rigor, and rigor tends to be the most important factor in college admission when you're looking at the academic side of things. I did ask this admission counselor at USC how they evaluate ACE courses, and her answer to me was, "What's ACE?" So I knew that they didn't do anything with ACE. And by the way, UCLA or any of the University of California schools, Davis, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Berkeley, any one of them, they don't give you any extra weight for ACE. They only do it for AP and IB when you are out of state. If you were an international student, you would probably have taken the TOEFL, or you could have taken the IELTS, or you could have taken the Duolingo if English is, has not been your primary language for the last 5 or 6 years. But for now, I'm just going to say I want to just share with you my SAT and my AP. If I'm not an international student, I really don't have to answer this. It's asking about a leaving exam, and some countries do have a leaving exam that, and they may have that instead of grades. Or you could answer it as a domestic student and just say no, but either way you can say if this doesn't pertain to you, you can either leave it blank or you could say no, it doesn't matter. So let's go into SAT tests. The nice thing is it no longer asks you how many times you've taken the SAT. It just wants to know how many pass scores you wish to report. So I'm going to say I'm going to report 2 pass scores because I'm going to super score my own test. Oh, sorry, I did this in the wrong place. Let's leave that out for now. I'm going to say that I want to report 2 sets of scores. And the SAT essay hasn't been given for a number of years, so for most people this will be no. And if I don't expect to take the test again, I would say no. If I do expect to take it again, I would indicate how many times I plan to take it. Well, for now, maybe I'll just add 1 for the future. So I'm going to share 2 scores with them, but I'm also planning on taking it again. So my future testing date, it's in 2024. And I am going to take the, let's see, I guess I will take the October test. And that means that a college might sit there and wait for that score to come in, or maybe not. Okay, so far, what was my highest reading writing score? Let's say my highest writing score was a 750. And I took that test in March of 2023. I don't know why it gave me March 1. It doesn't have to be March. It could be any date, I guess, in March. And the highest math score I got was also, let's say it was a 760. And I got that in May of 2023. Let's see what it does there for a date. Gave me May 1st. Okay, that's probably not the right date, but it doesn't hurt in any way. So the reason I'm telling it that I'm reporting 2 scores is because I use 2 completely different dates, 1 for math and 1 for reading writing. I'm curious what happens if I say that and I want to report 3 previous scores. I don't see how I can. Unless I took the essay and I was also reporting the essay score. No, but okay. So if both your scores that you're self-reporting are from the same date, your past scores you're reporting is just 1. But if they're from 2 different dates because you're super scoring, you would show both dates. And I indicated when I'm going to take it in the future. If I'm not sure if I'm going to take a future test, I could say 0, and that went away. If I'm applying to a college where I think my 750, 760 isn't, let's make it a little bit lower than 760 here. Let's make it lower so that it makes more sense. 680. So let's say my 750 plus 680 wasn't high enough for a couple of the colleges I'm applying to. Like, let's say I'm applying to Caltech. Then I know that I definitely am taking the test again. I may not even want to report any of this to Caltech at this point because the 680, I'm not super proud of it if I'm applying to school, like that. This is just a very tricky section that, if your scores are super high or super low, it makes it much easier. And by the way, not every school will accept a self-reported score, but some want a regular, official score report anyway. And one of the things you may want to do is once you have your college list, even though I believe Common App gives you the information of who takes self-reported and who doesn't, I like to go to the college's own website and see who requires an official score report, because for every college that I'm applying to that is not test optional, that requires, or even if they are test optional, but if you submit a score, they want an official score report. I really need to know that so I don't screw myself up by not sending an official score report. And I'll tell you, my little secret is, let's say I'm applying to a dozen schools and 8 of them say we only need a self-reported score, which is fine. They'll take it from the Common App. And 4 of them say we must have an official score report, which means you could still give them a self-reported, but you must also send an official score report, and it must get to them by the deadline that they have set up for scores. The deadline for scores may or may not be the same as the application deadline date. Because I don't like to waste my time, and I'm not as concerned about how much sending a score will cost, because it's a lot of money, but it's not a crazy amount of money. I will often tell a student, just send an official score report to every single college where you know you want them to have your scores, either because they are required or because you're very proud of your scores. So even if a college doesn't require an official score report, they will want it from you by the time if you decide to go there. So just to save time, unless your executive assistant, in other words, mom or dad, can go to every college's website to see whether they need an official score report, I actually like to, at some point before the deadline, send an official score report to every college to which I'm applying. But you don't have to. You only have to send it to the ones that require it. So anyway, I put in my SAT information. And of course, in this case, where one of my scores is really low, I'm going to say I am going to take it again. And I said I was going to take it again in October. That gives me enough time to prep for it. Okay, AP subject tests. And I wish they throw away the word subject, because you don't need it. How many subject tests do you wish to report, including tests you expect to take? I might list the ones that I expect to take first, because I might be deleting some from this list depending upon, I'm applying to a super hard to get into school. I'm going to throw away a couple of my 3s. The school I'm applying to is selective, but not that selective. I can put my 3s back in. So I might put my future tests first. And what I'm going to say is, hey, altogether I have 7 tests, because maybe I'm planning to take 4 at the end of my senior year, and I already have 3 that I know I'm going to report. I think here is the problem. Right now, before the rollover, I cannot specify 2025 as the date. So I really can't add all of my APs right now, and I really do want to list all my future ones first. What I could do, I think, is let's just say that what if I said that I plan to take this? Will this take it if I said May of 2025? If I just typed it, does it let me? Well, it won't let me, but I think I can still save the page with May of 2025 in here. Eventually I have to go in and retype it, because I think it'll throw it over during the rollover, because it's bad information. And maybe the one that I'm taking is going to be my calculus BC, and I have to leave it blank because I don't have a score yet. And then the next one that I'm going to take, I might again say May 2025. And again, I'm not sure this works, because I've never done it this way before. I've usually waited, but I'm trying to get this, through right now. Okay, maybe it's Art 2D and Design, and there is no score because I don't have it yet. But here's one from one that I did take. Let's say I took one in May of 2023, and let's say that was okay, well, say pre-calculus, because that's actually a new AP exam, and let's just say I got a 5 on it. That's how I would do it. And then I would probably keep if I have all really high scores, it doesn't matter, what order I put things in. But if I know I have some that I might want to delete, I would probably want to put them last. But you definitely want to put future AP, IB, or ACE in here, so colleges know that you expect to take these tests. And let's just see. I don't think it's going to tell me testing is done. It's not. What did I leave out? It says SAT test is not done. What did I leave out? I don't want an essay score. One future. I don't see anything that's missing. Okay, I know the AP subject tests are missing. But I wonder why. Okay, let's just say that I don't expect to take any tests in the future. And now I go down to the next one. Okay, now, okay. So for some reason, it didn't like what I put in for a future date. I'm not sure why. Okay. But again, it's your choice whether you're going to self-report or not. And so that you can share with some colleges and not all colleges, because remember that you submit one college at a time. So after I submit to, I don't know, High Point University, and I've sent them all my scores, and I'm now going to apply to North Carolina State, I may want to take my scores out and not send them to NC State, because NC State average scores are significantly higher than the ones I have. Okay. So again, if you choose to submit scores, many of the colleges do want an official score report. You can either look to see what Common App says, or you can look it up on the college pages, or just send them to every college that requires a score. And you do not send any AP score reports at this time. In fact, you don't send an AP score report or an IB score report or an ACE score report until you know where you're applying, where you're going, where you're committing to, where you're going to matriculate as a freshman. And then you can send an AP or IB or ACE score report, but you can wait until you get your senior scores back and send the whole thing at once. And at that point, yes, I know with AP, you definitely, if you want to leave a score out, you can. But at that point, it doesn't matter because you've already been accepted to college. And so there again is, reporting only the high scores and listing all your, future AP, IB, and ACE tests. Questions?
No questions.
Oh, good. Okay. Activities page is actually my favorite page. It is the hardest page, but I will tell you that if you have a resume, it's going to be significantly easier. So activities are not really required, because I can say I don't have any activities and I'm done. It'll tell me the page is finished. However, you're unlikely to get into college if you don't, or you're unlikely to get into the majority of colleges if you don't have activities. And honestly, even staying home to take care of a sick relative, or working after school a few days a week because you need to earn the money, these are activities. So it's school activities, it's outside activities, it's hobbies, it's summer things that you do, taking care of a family member. Oops. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Do I have any activities to report? I'm going to say yes. And all of a sudden, activity 1 opened up. So Common App does give you room for 10 activities, but there's limited amount of space. So I'm actually going to show you how I'm going to do an activity that has a lot of information. Let me go in and get, okay. This came from a student's actual resume. So I just excerpted this part of a student's resume. And honestly, this sort of looks like a work resume because it is highlighting specific achievements, what the student did to show leadership, what the various things were the student did. Each bullet point represents something else. With very few exceptions, they all begin with an action verb, like sought or collaborate or selected. An action verb of the correct tense. Okay. Also, at the very top of the entry for the resume, all of these are his leadership. And there's I'd say almost nothing that colleges like better. Well, almost, there's only one thing colleges probably like better than leadership, but you're going to see that there's a position for any kind of a leadership role in any activity you have. And so we are going to want to emphasize leadership if you have it. If this student didn't have any leadership, then it's really just, member, or maybe it's active member. And you would call that your leadership role. Okay, so I'm going to start with the fact that he was in student government and has these 3 leadership roles. So let's go back to Common App. And the first thing it's going to ask me is that the type of activity it was. Let me just click on this. And so this is student government. Let's see if there is something for student government and politics. So I picked that. And that's strictly a drop down. I think there's one that's, other. And, some of your activities may fall into more than one activity type. And it's hard to tell whether a college is looking for, let's say, 3 things that are in the same activity type, or a variety of 3 different things. There's no way to know if there's any kind of a preference. And I would say pick the activity type that you feel best describes, what your role, what that activity was. Okay, so here's where we're going to start having some trouble, because the leadership description is only 50 characters. So if I were to, for now, let's see what happens if I try to even copy all of this. So I'm just going to do a copy and paste down here, see what happens. Okay, well, first of all, I really don't want them on separate lines, but I've got some of this started. So this was a vice president of citizenship development. I'm not going to have enough room for this development. So I'm just going to say vice president of citizenship in grades 11 and 12, comma, I'll do a delete to bring treasurer up. And let's see, treasurer was grades 10. And then class secretary, let's abbreviate. So, okay, so I can't go any further. I can't even get class secretary in there. So I'm going to go back and abbreviate a little bit more. I'm going to call this Treas. That's fine. I'm going to leave the word class out. I'm going to abbreviate secretaries, SEC''Y, and that was grade 9. And let's see how much more there is. There's a few more characters. I don't know if there's enough room to spell out secretary. Yeah, there is. So I don't think there's enough to also spell out treasurer, but I see that I didn't have a space over here. T-R-E-S. U-R-E-R. Okay, so there's no, I could have either spelled out treasurer or secretary, or I didn't have to spell either one out. But this gets me, and it's fine. It's underlined because there's a spelling error, because there is no word treas, but it's fine. Colleges know that you're abbreviating, but that's how I got, all 3 of them in here. The organization name is just student government. I'm just going to copy it from here. I don't want to make a mistake typing, but again, if I make a mistake, if it's a spelling error, it'll show it to me. Okay, this is the really hard part, because you only have 150 characters to describe your role, or roles, plural. So I'm going to go back to the resume. Okay, so a good resume, the bullets are listed from most to least important, and I want to see what I can pull off from the first couple of bullets and abbreviated like crazy to try to make things fit. So the first one, sought increasing roles of leadership to build a foundation for future college and career leadership. Okay, it should be pretty clear that I had a role of secretary or treasurer or vice president, and so I went, increasing responsibility. I don't have to tell them. I think it's obvious in terms of only having, 150 characters to describe something. So I'm not going to tell them that. I'm not going to use that first line at all. The second line, collaborate with other student government members to plan and oversee school-wide events. Okay, some of that is usable. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to get rid of the bullet. Okay, collaborate with is W/, and I'm not going to say other SGA members. I'm just going to say SGA. So my with is a W, a slash, and the next word immediately afterward, no space. And I'm going to abbreviate members as MEMS. Collaborate with SGA MEMS to plan, okay, and ampersand, oversee school-wide events. And what are the events? Okay, so some of these events, this person was either chair or co-chair. So I'm going to change this to say to plan and chair, co-chair. School-wide events. Let's see, homecoming carnival. Let's see how much of this is going to fit. Homecoming carnival. And by the way, I would do this. One of the handouts is an activity worksheet, and you can use that. I don't think you can type into all of it, but you can certainly, work in, Microsoft Word or some other format in order to count your characters. I'm just doing it here on the fly. Trunk or treat. Freshman orientation. Let's leave out the word freshman because orientation usually is for freshmen. And the next one was the dance marathon in support of University of Florida Health Shands Children's Hospital. I'm just going to say Shands Dance Marathon. Okay, and the word collaborate is incredibly important. Colleges love, besides leaders, they love kids who are collaborators. I don't have to say the next one, selected to lead the Leadership Development Committee, because I've got up here that he was vice president of, citizen development, so I can leave that off. Let's see. A select subset of SGA officers who organize citizen development, outreach, and event projects. What if I said, let me see how much is left here. I could take off school-wide events. People probably know that most of these are school-wide. Chance Marathon and outreach events. I could do that. I could do it that way. I could leave out the outreach events and leave it the way it was before. What I'm trying to do is just get the most important information I can. Let's see if there's anything else. Milagro Center Career Day. No, I can't even fit in Milagro Center. So it's whichever way you liked it better. Oh, I could say, I still don't think I'm going to get enough. That's probably about the best I could do at this point because I still have a few characters left. I could change this from MEMS to members. And I could probably make this Shands Hospital Dance Marathon, HOSP. Let's see, is there room for hospital? Yes. Shands Hospital Dance Marathon and outreach events. Okay. The student did these things in grades 9 through 12. This might have been just during the school year, student government. My guess is it might not have done very much over school break. I'm going to skip down how many weeks per year. Most schools in Florida are 36 weeks a year, but let's just say student government didn't do very much for the first week and the last week. So maybe it's 34 weeks. And then I'm going to sit down and think about, okay, so our meetings are, let's say, 2 hours every week. And planning these events might take me another 3 hours almost every week. So maybe that's the averages out to maybe 4 hours a week plus the 2 hours for meetings. So maybe it's 6 hours. You can't put in 6.5. You can't put in 6 to 8. You're just guessing approximately how many hours, your best possible guess. For each activity, it wants to know if I'm going to participate in something similar in college. I'm going to say yes to most activities, but not all. I need to show I'm going to be discriminating. Okay, here's another thing that's very important. Please list your activities in the order of their importance to you. Only you can decide what the order of importance is. The worksheet that I'm sending you, or that you can download for activities, gives you the opportunity to actually assign numbers, weights based on your leadership role, your time commitment, and wind up ranking every one of your activities, and the ones with the most points, you're going to say, okay, well, those are the most important. And it's sort of a relatively easy way to figure out the order of your activities. But I will tell you that any activity that supports your potential major, like if this student was going to major in political science, or international relations, or peace and conflict studies, then student government and politics would absolutely come first because it's related to the major. If this is a student who's applying for business, but he did the summer program at Wharton or had an interesting summer job, chances are I would put that first because it is more highly related to the potential major. So what colleges love to see is leadership. So this stuff is super good over here because there's 3 different leadership roles. If they were all in this, well, okay, let me just leave it at that. If I didn't have specific appointed or elected leadership roles, I would just say something like active participant. The other thing they like to see is long-term commitment. So this is 4 years of commitment. They don't like to see a year of this, a year of that, a year of something else, unless something was only an opportunity for that was available to you for 1 year. They love to see things that are related to the major. They want to see things that you had an impact on other people in some way. Clearly, I can't get everything in here. Some colleges, a third of all colleges, will allow me to upload a resume. And so the resume is going to have the rest of my nitty-gritty detail. But 2/3 of all colleges don't allow for resume upload. So I'm going to show you a way to get in parts of your resume over and above the little bit that you can get into Common App. Okay. And by the way, once I add another activity, you can see like there's an up arrow over here. At this one, there's a down arrow. If I added yet one other activity after this, so that there's 3 activities, the last one has an up arrow. The one in the middle has both an up and a down, and the first one has a down arrow, because afterwards I can look at things and I could rearrange the order. You only have room for 10 activities, and they should really be your most meaningful activities. The idea is not to try to fill this whole thing up. If you were applying to medical school where they're asking for up to 15 activities and much longer descriptions, the answer is yes, you fill it all up, and hopefully you have 15 things to support your application for medical school that are all relevant to medical school. In this case, let's say you have 12 activities, if you can limit it to 8 or 9, it just makes you look a little bit more, and you're only picking your most important things. If you have too many activities and too many hours, they're going to think you spread yourself thin, unless, of course, you also have straight A's and you're taking really hard subjects, and it doesn't matter how many activities that you have. And I will show you something on another page on how you can get in much more detail about your activities, but just to show you what this looks like for the one activity we entered, you can see, oh, for some reason I picked school break. Hold on, I didn't mean to say school break. I did this, okay, during the school year on school break. No, I'm going to say I did it only during the school year. And by the way, Common App saves as you go. So if suddenly we lost power, I'm still fine. I'm not going to lose what I've done. Okay, so I did this only during school. My hours a week, my weeks per year, it's something I'm going to continue, not necessarily the exact same thing, but something similar. And as I add more, I'll get more activities in here. There's another download. If you only download one thing, this is the most important thing. There's something called activities tips that you can download that I gave very specific directions, very similar to what I just did tonight on one activity, except I show you lots of different examples and explain how to abbreviate, what to pick, how to condense down a large entry in your resume to only 150 meaningful characters. Sorry. Okay, let's go back and see what are the takeaways. It's the kiss of death if you don't have any activities, and more is not better. So fewer activities with as a long-term commitment as you might have had. And by the way, if you've done something, say, let's just say that you're on the softball team and you started that in 7th grade, there's no way to check off 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. You can only check off like 9, 10, 11, and 12. But your activity description can be something like my passion, or a focus of my life since grade 7, semicolon, the next thing you want to say about it. So there are ways to get in something that you've done in middle school as long as it's continued well into high school. Basically there's another activities worksheet if you wanted one that you could actually type things into. I have one that I could send you where you can type it into this worksheet, and it would count the characters for you, so that you didn't have to do it yourself with something, say, through Microsoft Word. So if you decide that you want another way to do an easy way to do activities, just email me and I can send you this extra activities worksheet. So when you're describing the activity, you're not describing, let's say, the club itself that you're in. If you're in the Future Business Leaders FBLA, it's not, FBLA exists to provide students with additional information about different areas of business that they might pursue. It's not, when it says description of activity, it means your activity within the activity. What did you actually do? And so you're going to do it what's called, resume style, but using, action verbs, abbreviations. You're throwing away superfluous words. In other words, if there's an or a the or an and, you don't need words like that. And you're really going to focus on perhaps why you've done something or what you've accomplished, and maybe where there was leadership or collaboration, and that you will continue some of your activities once you're in college. So please don't forget to download our activities page tips. It's long. It's probably about a dozen or so pages, but it's really going to help you better express what you did within each activity. And to be honest with you, even for the colleges that ask you for a resume, and the resume is optional, but it's my opinion, it's not optional. They still are going to go to the activities page, and they're going to get a lot of their information about you from the activities page. So you really want to be sure that your activities page is as thorough as possible. And again, starting with activities that are related to your major, and things that have just longer term and look like they're, significantly more important to you. But if you don't like the order of your activities, or you may decide that for applying to engineering school, I'm going to put my engineering summer program first, but I also did a business summer program, and I'm only going to put that one first on the schools that I applied to for business. So again, after I submit an application, I can go in and rearrange the activities and the order of the activities using the up and down arrows. Okay, the writing page. I guess you can pretty much guess what's on the writing page. I didn't finish the activity, so that's why it's not checked off. The writing page. Okay. Some colleges require the personal statement, but there are some colleges that don't require it. Like I put down Wilkes Honors College of FAU. They don't require your personal statement. But I will be given the chance to send it to Wilkes anyway. So I'm just saying, hey, I understand this. I'm not committing to sending it or not sending it, I just understand it. But these are the colleges that were on my list, and most selective colleges are going to want your personal statement. These are the different choices. It does not matter which personal statement choice, which prompt you choose to answer to. And in fact, the last one is essay on any topic of your choice. But I'm going to add something to that. It's essay on any topic of your choice as long as it's about you. Okay, it doesn't matter what it's about. I have a student now who's going to be writing, well, no, I can't tell you because I don't want to give away his idea, but it wouldn't fit into, I'll give you a slightly different idea. He's writing about his freckles. Okay, he's writing about something else, but I'm not giving away his idea, but how his freckles define who he is. And, perhaps how they embarrassed him and how he's overcome that and how that reflects more, in his life. So that's topic of your choice. Basically, once you have your essay written and rewritten, and you're sure that it's final, you're going to copy it into this area. You can copy and paste it from Microsoft Word. You can download it, I think, from another source, like from Google Drive here. If I wanted to see it really big, I could click on that box that opens it up, or I could make it smaller. There it is. Let's pretend that, well, actually, let's just type in a personal statement. So obviously this is a funny looking personal statement, but pretend it's real. I happen to like block format. I don't like indenting. I usually leave a blank line in between my paragraphs. And it tells me that my personal statement must be between 250 and 650 words. And right now I've used 141. I would say, your goal is to be at least at 500 or 550. I wouldn't want to submit a personal statement that was only 250 words. This is not long enough yet because I have to go up to at least 250 words. So I've now made it 421. Oops. Okay. If I want to see what it looks like bigger, there it is, bigger. And by the way, I'll make it smaller again. It's easier to actually look at, I think. If I wanted something to be bold, I can highlight it and I can click on B. I could also italicize it. I could underline it. I could also use shortcut keys on a PC. It's Control B for bold, or Control I for italic, or Control U for underline. On a Mac, instead of Control, it's Command, but it's those same letters, B, I, and U. Let's continue. Actually, no, let's go back. I want to do the preview because something funny happens with Common App. Oh, why didn't it let me preview the writing section? Oh, hold on. Let's go back a minute. Writing section. It's all in here. I said continue. Okay. If I now go in and say preview, it's not in there. That's really strange. What if I have to go to another page and then come back to the writing page? I'm not sure why it's not previewing, to tell you the truth. Still not previewing. Okay, let's try one other thing. Okay, it's 421 words. That's okay. Let's go into additional information. Let's just answer it. This is the one thing that is 100% optional, I swear on my life. This is the COVID-19 question. It wants to know how you were impacted by it. And I would say it only pays to answer this if you were impacted in a way that you feel is very different from your friends. Perhaps your parents lost their jobs, you had to move, maybe there was, some catastrophe within the family, something really unusual happened, and it could be something positive, like you really got involved in some online extra academics or community service, reading for the blind, something online, then you would answer this if you think your answer is going to be very, very different from your friends. Otherwise, you can say no. Let's just say I say continue now. I want to go back now to the writing page. And if I I know why it's not showing up. Darn it, I know why. I didn't tell it which prompt I was answering. I'm going to say I'm answering this one. Okay, now I'll just say continue. And I'm going to go into preview. Okay, there's my essay, but look at the awful work it did. It turned the blank line into a double blank line. And I just don't like that. It doesn't always do this. It depends how the essay gets copied in. I just typed it in. If I go back into this essay and I take out the blank lines, I'm not going to take them all out because it just takes too much time. And I say continue, and I now go into preview. You're going to see that where I took them out looks better. I didn't take them out down here. So you do always want to go into preview to see if everything looks the way you want it to look. Also, if you've used some special characters you have a bullet or something in there, or you have some other special character, you're going to find that it may not translate over. Accented characters do, but you may find that there's something funny looking in there. So you really do want to read your essay one more time when it's in preview mode to make sure it looks okay. But what I'm going to do now is my favorite thing. Do I want to provide details of qualifications not reflected on the application? I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say additional activity details. And it has a maximum of 650 words. I'm actually going to go back in and I'm going to bold that. And I've got to take off the bold. This is where I want to not copy in my resume, but if I've got 2 or 3 major activities in my resume that are very long, and I know that I couldn't get much into Common App itself in the activity page about it, and it's a really important activity or 2 activities to me, I'm actually going to copy them in, but I have to do some reformatting. So let me bring up a resume. It's a resume from one of my students from several years ago, and he was an Eagle Scout. And I've used the left side for the fact that he's done this since grade 5 and what his leadership roles were, and just something more personal about having been in Boy Scouts, and lots of detail. And clearly he couldn't get 99% of this into Common App. So I'm going to start copying. I'm just going to go on the left side, and I copied the whole left side. So I can put this on the next line just to make it look better. This sort of looks okay. Now this is where the picture was. I'm going to just take out these blank lines. I'm just deleting them. Okay. And it didn't like assistant abbreviated that way because it's spelling error. It doesn't matter. It's fine because we know it's just an abbreviation. But that was stuff that was on the left side. To go to the right side, I'm just going to highlight all of this. I'm going to Control C. I'm on a PC, and Control V to paste it in. Let's see if I can go up to preview right now to see what I put in there. You see that awful spacing. You also see the funny characters. I'm going to be able to fix all of that, but it copied all of it in there. So I'm going to make this bigger. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I am going to show you about reformatting it. So he was an Eagle Scout. I don't think I really need a bullet in front of that. And I might make this bold. I'm going to use my favorite bullet to use. I don't like those funny looking eyes that it did. I'm going to do an asterisk. It's my favorite bullet to use with just one space after it. And this is actually should be indented. It doesn't indent. I'm copying from Microsoft Word, which would be like copying from Google Docs, let's say, but I'm copying it into a text box. And so it loses all of its formatting. I don't necessarily need to have any kind of a bullet here, but I am going to like indent to here. I'll get rid of that bullet. But you can see what I'm doing. I'm just trying to line everything up. Some of them were starred, and that's because they were required for Eagle Scout. I might just move this back so it looks like it's centered under there. But basically, you can go in and reformat, or I should say fix the formatting. And I've used 304 of 650 words. If I had another activity that was super important to me and super long, I could put it in here. And I did put in a title up here of additional activity details so they know what it is. And if I wanted to start taking out some extra spaces, I could. It's just a matter of how I want it to look. The extra spaces don't add words. But, and there's a big but to doing this. If the college allows a resume upload, then I have to say I have nothing extra to add. And it's gone. And if I go into preview mode, it's not in there. But if the college does not allow for a resume upload, I say yes, and it's back. So you need to look up in advance which, and we haven't gotten to that part yet, but which colleges allow a resume upload and which don't. Because if, as I said, you only do this if you have a couple of activities, 2, maybe 3, that are very long and they're very important, and you know that Common App did not do an adequate job in 150 characters of describing your role. You can copy from your resume, but you're either doing a resume or you're doing additional information, so you're going to have to change it, you know, for each time you submit. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. It's a personal statement. Pick any prompt you want. You're telling a story. You have a great opening hook to it, and you're a very, very insightful conclusion reflecting on something that you've written about and maybe how it's changed your life or what your new outlook is. And even for the colleges that don't require the personal statement, you can still say yes eventually when you submit and send it. But it does tell a story, and it's a story about you. And you saw how I used the preview button to look at the spacing. And by the way, this past year, Common App bolded a lot of the essays for some unknown reason. And it may have depended upon how you copied it in, but if it's bolded and you don't want it bold, you just highlight the whole thing and unbold it. And that COVID-19 essay, again, only if something really extreme one way or the other happened to you. There's a wonderful webinar that we've done on essays that much, much longer than what I've just done here on the essay, because this isn't the essay webinar, but there is the link to the essay webinar if you'd like to play it and hear some essays and get some better ideas about writing a good essay. There are other uses, as you can see from the screen, on the additional information. Perhaps you were sick or your grades fell down, or you earned an AA degree while you were in high school. Maybe you had so many AP scores that they didn't all fit on the testing page. I've seen that before. But nonetheless, there are a lot of ways you could use the additional information if you want to. I just gave you one that's my favorite. Okay, but that's my favorite, you know, those key resume details. Okay, the courses and grades page. So if I click on this, first of all, you can see that only one college of the colleges in my list required it. And it was the University of Maryland. You must have a copy of your resume with you in order to, not your resume, sorry, your transcript in order to do it. And you're basically entering your courses and your grades from your transcript. For 9th, 10th, 11th, you only enter 12th if you've earned grades already. So for the majority of you, or almost everyone, you know, here, you will not have earned any grades, and you don't enter anything for 12th grade. The other courses, this is where you add high school courses taken in middle school, or summer courses you've taken, whether you took it before ninth grade, after ninth grade, but it was a high school course, those all get entered in this area. And just to give you an idea of what, this looks like when you want to go to add your ninth grade, it's the name of the school, it's the subject, it's the course name. I mean, it's very, very straightforward. It's just a pain in the butt to do. And I would suggest that you sit there with mom and or dad, and that one of you read off courses and grades and the other one type it in. So I'm going to get out of there. But I don't know, maybe there's 40 colleges that require it. I don't know the exact number, but University of Maryland happens to be one of them, which is why I made sure I had it in the list. And this is exactly what I've told you before. Just don't enter the senior courses unless you already have grades, and have two people there, doing it. Okay, getting near the very end, thank goodness. FERPA and recommendations. FERPA is your right to privacy, and you can't complete it now. It doesn't roll over where the FERPA information is, but it basically gives your school permission to send your recommendations and to send your transcript. And you're also asked if you want to waive your rights to access your recommendations. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Let's go down to recommendations. And you only do the FERPA page once. Once you do it for a college, it takes over for all of them. But okay, so you could click on this to really learn more about FERPA, but I'm telling you, it's just, it's a federal law for your right to privacy. And so you really can't apply to college unless you sign away your FERPA rights, because otherwise your high school can't send your transcript or your recommendation. So I'm going to say that I read and understood my FERPA release explanation above, and I'm okay with it. And that every school I've attended can release my records. And I would strongly urge you to always waive your right to review your recommendations and any supporting documents. If you don't waive your right to review your recommendation, a college might not take it seriously, because they're going to say, oh, well, she saw her recommendation. The teacher couldn't really write how she felt about the student. You actually can see your recommendations. What this really means is that you're waiving your right to see the recommendation once it gets to the college. Okay, so teachers can show you the recommendations. Most schools tell teachers not to show the recommendations to the students. But once that recommendation gets to the college, if you've waived your rights, you cannot ask to see it. And the only reason you might ask to see it is you might say, oh, I got rejected from, SMU. And I'll bet it's because that lousy teacher, Mrs. Rabinovitz, that I had for AP Calculus, that might be the only course I would teach, by the way, probably wrote such a terrible recommendation. I demand to see it, because if it's as bad as I think it could have been, then I'm going to sue her. So if a teacher knows you haven't waived your rights, she might not write a completely honest recommendation. So please always waive your rights to review your recommendations. And that once I've done this, and by the way, I had to sign into this or get to this page from one of the colleges. So I think I picked Emory. It doesn't matter which one you pick, because everything I do for FERPA and waiving my rights has to do with every single college, not just the one that I did it for. I'm going to sign it here. Let's see. This was the one that was for Alana Rabinovitz, no such person, and the date. If I just click on the calendar, it's going to give me today's date, and I'm going to save and close. So now I've done my FERPA. FERPA will automatically bring you to recommendations. First of all, if your school uses a system like SCORE or Maya Learning or Naviance, any like ones like that, then you're going to most likely do your recommendations through that software, or through that platform, not through Common App. But if you're at one of our public high schools in Florida, most of them don't use a system like that, and you're going to be doing all the recommendation inviting through Common App. Do not do it now. It does not roll over. Basically, you're going to, okay, this was for a particular school, and it told me that, it needed 2 teacher recommendations, and it also allowed for another recommendation, like an employer or an art teacher. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Colleges really want to see, they prefer to see junior year teachers, core academic teachers like English, math, science, social science, foreign language, computer science, and one of those should be related to your potential major if you're applying something other than undecided. And it's fine, by the way, to apply undecided. I think a recommendation can have more, an application can have more punch to it if you're applying for a specific major, because I can focus some activities towards that major. I can focus some recommendations towards that major. So if I'm applying as a business major, I definitely want to have my math teacher, because all good business colleges are looking for kids who've either taken calculus or are calculus ready by the time they get to college. There are a few teaching schools that don't care about that, but that's pretty rare. And then I'm likely to ask either my English or my history or my government or my economics teacher. I'm probably not going to ask, let's say, my Spanish teacher, because foreign language teachers don't write as well as, say, an English teacher or history teacher, and I want something that's really written well. If I were going to be an international studies major, I might do a foreign language teacher, but hopefully her native language is English and she writes better. But you're basically going to invite recommenders, and so you might be adding a couple of teachers. You'll have to add your counselor at school. You might add an extra one. It could be an athletic coach, a boss at work, a supervisor at community service. You don't have to have an extra one, but most colleges want 1 or 2 core academic teachers, and they almost always will take an extra one. But again, junior teachers are best, and at least one somewhat related to your potential major. But you're actually going to wind up inviting them. I'm not going to do this now because I don't want to actually send an email. That's what this does. It sends an email inviting the recommender, and I don't want to do that now because it's not going to roll over, and I don't want to send an email to anybody. But then after you pick, say, 3 or 4 different recommenders, then you're going to assign them to each college. So you might do your English and math teacher for the colleges where you're applying for business and engineering, and you might do your English and history teacher for colleges where you're applying for peace and conflict studies, because maybe you're also interested, in that. So you're inviting and you're assigning. I am not going to go through that now because many of you will be using Naviance, and again, it's stuff that doesn't roll over. So let's see, we've talked about this. Your school counselor, again, you're going to add your school counselor. Your school counselor does a recommendation for you. It's often called the school recommendation. And, each college will determine for, itself and tell you how many recommendations you need and whether they need to be, the teachers, the counselor, whether it's an optional recommendation of someone who's not a teacher. And the Common App will send out that, email to ask them to send a recommendation, and they send the recommendation directly to Common App, and Common App then attaches it to each college where you've used that teacher's name. But again, if you're using Naviance, Score, or Maya Learning, chances are your recommendations are all going to come through that, not through Common App. Almost there. Okay. Every college has a questions page. I can get to it either from my colleges or I can get to it from my dashboard. It makes no difference. I'm going to do it from my colleges. I'm going to pick Dartmouth, and I'm going to click on, and by the way, notice recommendations and FERPA is checked, basically because I did the FERPA already and I did it for one other college, so it applies to all of them. The questions page for Dartmouth. Every college has its own questions page. This goes only to that college at the time Common App is sent. And there is Common App has a database of, I don't know, 100, 200 questions, and colleges can pick which ones they want to ask. So don't fill this out because it does not roll over. But to give you an idea, it's going to ask you when you want to start. If I was looking at University of Florida, it would tell me I could start in the fall or I could start, in the summer. For Dartmouth, I could have applied early decision or I could have applied regular decision. I wonder if I say early decision, if it tells me that I'm too late for it. I have to say that I understand what it means. I have to sign off, but this works very much like the rest of the application, where you see that there are sections that you fill out. That's interesting. I haven't even gotten here yet, and activities is checked off. Any idea what that might mean if it's checked off and I haven't done it yet? Okay, it means it's optional. And let's just see what's in here. This is Dartmouth. Oh, it's letting me upload my resume. And I will tell you that you're better off uploading a PDF than uploading a Word document, because this way you're sure that it's going to keep the format. Oh, but it's also allowing me to add activities. What activities at Dartmouth interest you? Now, this is very interesting. This is a drop down, and it tells me that there's 5. I can pick up to 5. So I'm going to just randomly pick some. I'm going to add another one. Do not ever just answer with just one. I'm just randomly picking things. I'm not sure why that other thing is popping up in here. Oh, I know why, because I'm clicking here instead of on the drop down. So, okay. Never ever just have one in there. If there's room for 5, I would consider going to at least 4, assuming that there are things that interest you, and they want them listed in order of importance. So if this one is more important than the one above it, I can hit the up arrow and it just moved it up. If community service is less important than number 3, I can move it down. So there'll be a few types of questions that allow you to pick from a drop down. Almost always pick more than one. You're often asked, how did you learn about the college? And it could be a college fair. It could be website. It could be social media. It could be a particular book. It could be from a friend. And then it could ask, if the friend is a student, it could ask you for that student's name. But you're going to try to pick multiple. The questions page could have an essay in it. In this case, it doesn't. In fact, let's find a college that might have an essay in it. Let's go to Emory. Let's go to Emory's questions page. Writing. Let's see what the writing is. 1, 2. There's 2 different essays. So your questions page might have essays. It might have your resume. It's certainly going to ask you whether you want to live like on or off campus, or if you're applying for need-based financial aid, or what your potential major is, or if you're applying early decision. These are typically things that are in the questions pages, but you can't do them now. So don't even worry about it. You can do it after August 1st. By the way, if you're filling out, the things that will roll over now, and in order to see that rollover happen, here's what's going to go on. I think it's July 26th or 27th. Common App is going to go down for a few days. If you try to get on Common App, you're going to get an error message that Common App is shut for maintenance. Don't worry about it. The minute you get on August 1st, and sometimes it happens the night of July 31st, late at night, the first question you'll be asked if you've already started your application is, hey, we've just rolled over. Do you want us to roll you over? It doesn't quite say it that way, but you're going to answer yes. If you answer no, you're dead. So answer yes, you want to roll over. It'll ask you a couple of other questions, then it will roll over everything where the question itself hasn't changed in those basic Common App pages, and your college list will roll over. But if you've done questions pages or supplement pages, which we haven't gotten to yet, none of that's going to roll over. Your recommendations, your FERPA, none of that rolls over, so don't bother with it. So when you submit your Common App, it does submit Common App with the questions pages, but there's more to come. Let's go back into this. So each college questions page, after August 1st, as soon as possible, fill out as much as you can of each college's questions page. And these are the types of questions that you're going to be answering. And you may or may not find, essays in there. And sometimes there are hidden essays, because one of the things you're often asked to do on the questions page is to pick your potential major. And once you've picked your potential major, it might then open up an essay question specifically about that major at that college. So you might first look at something and say, oh, it doesn't have any essay questions. But then depending upon how you answered one question, it might open up an essay question. And it certainly may provide the opportunity to upload your resume. And if you see, I just showed you how there was an area that had a green check mark. Even though it looks like it's finished, open it up and you'll see, because it may all have things that are optional, but optional in here is going to mean required. So I'm invited to upload my resume. That really says to me, and FSU is particularly this, is invite you to optionally upload your resume. They really want a resume, and your resume is not just a list of your activities. It has that level of detail that I showed you. It's something like that we do with all of our students, and each member of my team does it in a slightly different way, but we all do it. Oh, and UCF includes optional essays and it will tell you if an essay is optional, because it doesn't have that red asterisk after it. Please remember that optional essays that appear on the questions page, or even if it's in a supplement, isn't really optional. And by the way, these supplemental essays, over and above your personal statement, sometimes they're even more important than your personal statement. Depends on the college. Okay. So every college has its own questions page. The question page gets submitted with Common App itself. Some colleges have what's called a supplement. Not all colleges have them. Let's take a look at what we have here in Common App. Let's start with Dartmouth. Okay, so Dartmouth has something called the writing supplement, and I got to it because I was in my colleges. But look, I can get to it from my dashboard too. If I say show more details, here it says writing supplement. So the writing supplement is different from the questions. Everybody has a questions page, but only some colleges have a writing supplement. And that writing supplement, of course, has essay questions in it. Okay, the difference is that the writing supplement is submitted separately from the application. The reason colleges like the idea of a supplement is because they feel they can get your money sooner for your application fee if you don't have to submit a whole bunch of essays. So if I'm just submitting my application and there's no essay questions in the writing page, I may feel, okay, great, I'm going to submit it. I'm going to pay my application fee, and I'll wait another several weeks or months to submit my supplement, getting it in before the deadline. Wrong in my opinion anyway. I tell students, do not submit an application that has a supplement unless the supplement is done and ready to go and all the essays are finished. Because then after you submit the application, which will submit the application and the writing and the questions page, you 2 minutes later go in and say, now I want to submit my supplement. So there is no time lapse between your application and your supplement. It also shows colleges you're not a procrastinator, and that's assuming you're applying well before their deadline. So I do not want you doing the supplement. And these are typical questions that you might see on the supplement, like why this college? What unique qualities bring you to our campus? Again, if you watch that webinar that we did on writing essays, you're going to hear us read several why this college essays, and you'll understand the depth of research you have to do, because I can't just say to Boston University that BU is the college for me. It's located in one of in America's college town. There's more college kids in Boston than any other college and than any other city in America. It has a vibrant campus life. I'll be surrounded by academically successful students and renowned professors, and I'll also be able to take advantage of all of Boston's cultural events. And because I'm from Florida, I will enjoy the 4 seasons that I don't have here in Florida. Okay, that essay will be thrown in the garbage because that could work for any northern urban city. That essay must go into nitty-gritty detail about the particular major you've chosen, professors whose courses you want to take and why, particular research that's going on and why that's of interest to you and how you envision yourself participating in it. An extracurricular activity that's related to something that you've already done and talk about the importance for you of carrying on that tradition. So these are the why this college or why this major essay are not easy to write. And as I said, they can be more important than your actual personal statement. Okay, again, submitting the supplement if a college has one, and only a small percentage of the colleges have them, and they tend to be some of our nation's most selective universities, and they can have many, many, many essays on them. There is a page in Common App that will be up until the rollover, until late July, where you can find out what all the additional essay requirements were this year. There's no guarantee that they will be the same for next year. These are not the personal statement. These are the supplemental essays that are either going to be in the questions page or in the supplement. And in fact, I'm going to click on this just to show you, and you may want to take a screenshot of this particular page because this is a really great link that most people don't know exists. But if I click on it now, and I can see that there's a list of every college that's on the Common App. And let's say I go back to Babson and I click on it. It's going to tell me, look, there are the essays. Or I could have on here said Wake, paste spot right, Forest. I only put in the Wake. That gave me, it's long essays. There are some short ones. I'm surprised they didn't show up here. Let me back up a minute and let me put in Stanford, which I know has a lot. Oh, there they are. So if you're applying to Stanford, you can see you have quite a few extra essays. And let me go back here. I would say before the Common App closes for maintenance, go in there to this particular, follow this link and make let's say a list or a spreadsheet of all the extra essays you think you'll need. Not that I want you to start writing them, but I want you to see how many essays there are likely to be for next year. You could do what one of my students just did. One of my students just finished his personal statement and he is starting on the writing supplements for his colleges. And he looked up and has a spreadsheet of all the extra ones he needs, but he called his two favorite colleges and asked admissions if their essay questions are changing for next year. And both colleges told him they are almost positive that the questions will remain the same. So he is starting on those. Anything you can get done before you go back to school, because your senior grades, first quarter especially, are incredibly important. Many colleges will make decisions on you after those first quarter grades are available. Whew, we're done. If you've enjoyed this webinar, and I swear on my life that the others are nowhere near as long, and I'm so sorry that this one is as long as it is, but you can see that there's so much for Common App, but there's some other really great webinars that you'll find on our webinar page that you can hear the recordings of. And we do hope that you'll think about contacting us if you need any help in creating a resume, creating a college list, writing a personal statement, doing a personal project, anything at all. We're here to help you. And now we'll finish up to see if there's any questions.
One final question. Should we still have a separate email for college applications if we have been in college lists with another email?
Okay. So should you still create a brand new email for colleges if you've already been in contact with a number of colleges using a different email address? In that case, I would stick with the email address you already have. Just make sure to check it. I know that teenagers are like me, more addicted to texts and cell phones. But I promise you that you will get lots of communication through email, and it will be very important to check your email daily. The only reason I suggest having a different email is that way you're not sharing your email with your parents, and they can be your administrative or executive assistants and check your email. But if colleges, some colleges already have your email, then use that email and don't have two different emails, for colleges. One email is enough. Anything else?
That's it.
So I just want to thank you all for bearing with me. And if you missed any part of this, you'll certainly be able to play the recording. And thanks. Have a lovely evening. Bye, everyone.